Alright, welcome to today's video, and in today's video we're going to ABAP basics for modern ABAP programming, and it's more like a crash course. So how to read basic ABAP code, understand what variables are, data types, what they really are, and then we're going to also follow the program logic. You also learn debugging. So the idea of this video is that I still see a lot of beginners still using SAP GUI login screen for their programs. So we are creating this course and going through this tutorial also to make it possible for beginners to learn modern ABAP programming. This is actually a foundation of everything that you need to get started modern ABAP program. The next class or the next lesson, I'll be showing you how to work with classes. We define the global class, define local classes, we define the attributes, make private attributes, make attributes public, and also how to instantiate a class, and so much more. So if you are interested in this series, don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. So when you know a lot of code snippets and what they do, if you see many lines of code, you are not scared, and then you can actually follow program logic and understand how it works. And of course, debugging is what makes you a developer. So we're also going to look into how to debug code. So we are going to start with the rules. Remember, the rules that can save you hours of debugging. So why should we start with rules? Before we write any logic, actually, we need to understand how ABAP expect us to write. And these are just simple rules. And if you don't follow this rule as a beginner, it leads to 80% of the errors that beginners have. So let's start with the first one, rule number one. Rule number one, ABAP statements start with a keyword and end with a period, which is like a full stop. So for example, you see the keyword data, and then this is a variable text, and this is another keyword type, and string. If you don't know what this is, just hold on, I will explain in some minutes. All right, so what I want to show us in rule one is that it starts with a keyword. So for instance, if you want to write a statement, ABAP is like a sentence, and the first thing that comes is a keyword. In this example, we are declaring a variable my text as a type of string. So this is a keyword, and you have to end it with a period, a full stop, right? Okay, so rule number two. The rule number two is that ABAP is not case sensitive. All right, so if you are declaring a variable, for instance, we have data name, which is a type of string, and data name type of string. You see that the name here has a capital letter N, and here also we have a small letter n. This is not case sensitive. All right, so but as developers, you must follow conventions. So clean code is for humans, not just for the compilers. So all right, let's look at rule 3. ABAP is strongly typed, and this means that every variable that you define has a defined type. Okay, it must be typed. So ABAP knows exactly what kind of value hold. So what this does is that it will protect you from mixing text and numbers. It will also protect you from unexpected calculations. So we're going to look at how the different typing of the variables are done in some minute. And the rule number 4 is comments. Comments are your best friend. So you can do a full line comment by just putting an asterisk at the beginning of the line, and then you can do inline comments by putting double quotes in front of the text you want to comment out. All right, so we'll look at this in practice. Okay, so the system will ignore comments, but the future you and your teammates will thank you, because sometimes you feel that after writing some line of code, come back later and you don't understand what you did. So you can add comments to give more description, some backgrounds to what you are trying to do. Okay, before we go into the Eclipse and to play around with what we just learned, let me also explain to you what it means by data object and data types. So what is a data object? A data object is actually a named box in the memory. You can think of it this way. So this box, it has a type and it can hold one value, exists while the program is running. So you can see there are different types of boxes here. So this could signify that there are different types of data objects. So each of the boxes has different types, and they can hold one single value. All right, So for instance, if you look right up here, this is the syntax for data declaration. You're going to have data, then you give a variable text followed by the keyword type, and then the type of data object string, and then you have value above. So right here you can see data means that creates a data object. So this can be understood as data declaration. Then my variable is the name of the box that we said initially. So then the type string, this is the kind of value that it can hold. If you are familiar with programming, you know that the string is text or characters. Then value above. So this is more like giving a default value, a starting value for the string. And the thing is, you don't always need value, but the type is mandatory. So type is mandatory, value is not mandatory. And of course, they are also built-in types, and we're going to do the live demo now. So we can have string type I, which is integer, type D, which is decimal, type C, which is character, and then length of 10. So what you are saying is here is that you are defining the variable to have a type of character and the length to be 10. And then right here we have type N, which is number, and then length of 10. And this type N is something like, for instance, you want to define a telephone number. You know, this is not normal integer number that you have counts, but these are numbers. Or you want to define something like social security number or tax ID. And then data variable type packed. So packed, this P means packed, is for floating points. So for instance, you can have 8.50 and then decimal 2. So this 2 means the number of decimal places you have in the figure. All right, so let's go to the live demo. So from previous video, you already know that we need to create a class. Okay, to run a program, create a class in Eclipse. Right click on your package. If you don't know how to create a package, check the previous video, lesson 2. So go to new, go to ABAP class, and just give a name to this class. So remember that the naming convention has to start with Z, so I can say Z underscore SAPVIC underscore ABAP basics. So this will be the name of the class, and what will be the description, data logic, and error debugging. So this file will contain all our live explanations and live demos. Now for us to be able to run the program in Eclipse console, we need to extend the interface for this particular class run. So I already covered this in previous video. So we just get this interface, if underscore o underscore adt underscore class run, and then click on OK. So click on next. We are unable to create transport request at the moment because this is a local development, and let's click on finish. So here we have our class created. If you don't know much about classes yet, don't worry. The next video we are going to look at how to create classes, class definition, class implementation. And so for the purpose of this lesson, we are going to extend the method in this interface. Inside the implementation is where we are going to write our code. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste the code right here, and then we uncomment and go through the explanation together. The reason for this is with AI code anymore, but the fundamentals is very important. So when you understand the fundamentals, when you look at the code, you're able to understand what is going on. And that's why this tutorial is very important. Of course, as at this point, many persons will say, oh, because AI is taking over, you don't have to learn how to code, you don't have to go through tutorials, but that is wrong. Because if you don't understand the fundamentals and how to navigate and how the logic flows, you will not even be able to understand what AI is giving you in the first place. All right, so let's get the data declaration text, and then we'll comment and see how it operates. So this is data. We are declaring my variable, my var, as a type of string. And so if you want to print this out to the console, you could see that here I have auto completions, IntelliSense. This is not available when you are using the classic SAP GUI screen. So there is no IntelliSense whatsoever. If I go to display mode, if you are typing, okay, there's some kind of IntelliSense anyway, but not as much as we have it in Eclipse ADT. All right, so you get some IntelliSense based on what you have typed so far, or based on the objects that you have used so far. Okay, all right, so now to print out this my variable, we are going to use a method, right? And then you just say out, and this arrow mark here means instance component selector. So this is more like a reference variable, and this is a method for this class. Then we pass in the text that we want to be printed out on the console, and in this example the text is my var. However, at this point my var does not have any value. Okay, so my var has no value inside. So if we print this at this point, we are going to get, so let's see what we're going to get in the output. Just control save, check, activate. So right below here you can see the console. The console is activated, so we need to run. When you click on run, yeah, you have to make sure the executable class. Click on run, then select ABAP application console and OK. So we get nothing in the output. So let's just test and print out a normal text. If you want to do formatting of your text or syntax, you can do Shift F1 and see that this is properly formatted. So I want to just print out text, let's say initial value. So without me declaring or initializing the variable in my var, so what do we have printed on console? Let's check one more time. Check contains no error down here. Then activate. You can also use your shortcuts. So Control F3 is activate. ABAP basic activated, and let's run this now. Now we see initial value is nothing, right? Because we have not initialized my var. So but when we come here and said okay, down here my var is equal to hello user. Okay, remember at the end of every statement you put a full stop or a period. So let's Control F2, check for error, wait, then let's run this and see. Yeah, so now we have it printed on the console. Initial value is equal to hello user. Anyway, I'll show you a better way to concatenate expressions in the next few minutes. Okay, so this is just an example of how we can initialize our variables using the keyword data. So likewise, you can uncomment this. So what we're going to do is let's edit these parts and say initial value is equal to this. Then right here we are going to put other variables to play around with the other data types. So my var, we want to look at integers now. The second one, 91, is type I, integers. So I can say my var equals to 35 period. Then let's print out this. You can see the autocomplete or IntelliSense giving me code snippets, most likely because of Joule. I have access to Joule here. All right, so let me know in the comment section if you also get these auto completions on your normal Eclipse account without Joule. Okay, so tap and it gives me code suggestions and complete the code for me. Okay, so what we are doing here, I think it's done it twice. What we are doing here is that the first time it prints the initial value, okay, the initial value of the variable, and then move this. Then what we do next is that we give a value, and right here we can say value after assignment. All right, so the equality sign is actually the assignment operator. So that means whatever value, this is a string, I'm not looking for integers, it should not be in quotes. Okay, so the value here is passed into this on the left. All right, so this value assignment, so wherever you type my var now, is going to have this value 35. Remember what we explained earlier, that it's like a box. The box holds a value and it has a type. All right, so let's save, Control S. Okay, so save, you can do syntax check. So no errors found, activate, then click on execute ABAP application on console, click OK. So now, and I can clear the screen first, can just do clear and execute once more. ABAP, no, not ABAP test cockpit. So let's, yeah, ABAP application console. So you can see here that initial value is empty, and then value after assignment, that's after we assign 35 to my var, so my var is now 35. Okay, so assignment happens after declaration, as you have seen, and the type decides how the value is interpreted. So you can go ahead and play with, you uncomment these other parts to check for decimal, to check for character with length 10, to check for numbers, to check for pack, and see how you understand this more. Alright, so in the third part we are looking at constants and literals. So just looking at variables versus constant. In the previous part we looked at variables, and for a variable the difference is that for a variable the value change. So constants are important because they protect important values. So if we have values that are very important, making it constant to make it safe, and it also make the intent very clear. All right. So in ABAP, to declare a constant, what you need to just do is to use the keyword constant. Remember the first, it was the first rule or the second rule? Yeah, remember the first rule. ABAP starts with keyword. Okay. So if you want to declare a constant, then you should start with the keyword constants. Constants, and then followed by the variable. Let's say constant. Sometimes constant is your age. Okay, constant my age. You know that is ABAP is typed, so followed by type, and then what's the type of age? You can say int. And for a constant, it's mandatory that you specify a default value or initial value. So for variables, it is not mandatory to specify initial value. So let's say value 25. So if you make it in quotes, then this means this becomes a string. So we are looking for int, so just put 25 and period. So now for us to see, we can just say my var equals my age. So my var, let's just put my age inside my var. Okay, so that we can see it. Now this is not formatted. You can just do Ctrl F1 and the text is formatted. So I'm going to comment out this so that when we print Shift F1 rather. So when we print out my var, we'll be able to see the age. So let's say age. Just remove this and say ages. Okay. Okay, my age is now. Let's see. I can also comment out this. So I think I'm going to mention it in some videos later. So comment, you can comment out the whole line by putting asterisk, but the asterisk sign has to be at the beginning, okay, for you not to get an error. So let's take the asterisk sign to the beginning of the line, then you don't get an error. The second way to make a comment, which is inline comment, is quotation mark, right? So right here you see the quotes here. You can use this anywhere in your code to add a comment, okay? All right, so let's save this. I want to print out my age. Anyway, this assignment is not needed, so I can just repeat this one. Yeah, I wanted to keep the text. That's why I was trying to play smart, but yeah, just say my age. Remember that in this method, you need to keep a blank space between the bracket and your variable, okay? So if you make this way without no blanks, then you get an error. My statement concluding with my age ended unexpectedly, so you need to put at least one space, all right? Okay, now, so let's save this. Let me clear the console. I wanted this to be a very short tutorial, but my explanation is going into more details because I know that behind this camera is someone who is actually interested in learning. So activate, and then let's execute this on the ABAP application console. Okay, so see my age is now 25. Of course, this is not yet properly formatted. We are going to look at the proper way to format everything and put it in the same line. Okay, very easy, no messy concatenation whatsoever. All right, so this is how you use constants. Okay, so now the next thing we are going to look at is what we call types. So there are local types and there are also global types. So when you use the keyword types, what you are doing is that you are creating a custom type, a customized type. You know, we have built-in types like string, integers, decimal, packed numbers, so characters also. But when you use the keyword types, it means that you are creating your own custom type. Why? Because of your reusability. You want to reuse it multiple times, and then when you want to change something, you change it once and all the variables adapt instead of going line by line to change. So I will show you what I mean in the example. So we want to create a local type. So this local type means that these are our own customized type. I don't want to use the word customized, but custom type. So I put a comment right here and just put asterisk. This goes, this goes, this goes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just put a bunch of comment lines, right? And then we can see local types. So now if you want, of course, ABAP start keyword. So you want to custom your own type, you use the keyword types in plural types. And let's say types ty_amount, or is now the type is packed and it has a length of 3 and the decimal place is decimals 2. Okay, so now what we are doing here is that we are creating a type So we are creating a type of packed with a length of 3 and decimal places 2. So anywhere we use this type ty amount, it automatically reuse this declaration. So we now declare now and say data, let's say price. We now carry the type ty underscore amount. All right. And of course, let's give an example. See, I have some auto completion here. I can just press on tab, and so this will not go because the auto completion gave me these values, but remember my length here is 3, so I'm getting some error. So this is another advantage of using Eclipse, which I don't think this is possible with the SAP GUI. So let's see if this works. Okay, so now you see the same code I pasted here. Even if I take these types and declaration to the top here where we declare variables, you see there's no runtime error detection or during coding error detection. All right, so you only get error detection after you execute the program. So this is another advantage that you get with using Eclipse. You see, because the length here is 3 and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, so it's going to throw an error. So to solve this, you have to have a maximum of 3 here, 3 figures, and the decimal place is 2. This is what we declared. So you can say print the price in euros. So if I want to create another data type with these same parameters, I can say, let's say data. So let's say data weight. Then this weight will also be of, okay, let me not use weight. Let's use something that has amount. So let's say shoe size, shoe price, okay? And this type now will be type ty underscore amount, right? So right here, you can also give other samples. So you can have data shoe price with type ty amount, data shirt price with type ty amount, and all these prices with this amount, with this type. So this helps us to reuse it multiple times, like we have done. And when we want to change, for instance, say, oh, the price is no longer length of 3, we have to make it length of 5, and then decimal places says you have to make 3. So you just update it to one place and all the other part is adapted to the correction or the update. So instead of trying to, use here, you have to use a type of packed, and then you say if it's p length 5, and then you give decimal 3, and if you do same right here, so you see that when there's any adjustment or correction that needs to be made, then you have to make changes for everything. So you get the point now. This is where types comes into the equation. When you want to reuse a certain type, this is what you do. Okay, so let me undo, and of course you can just print it out, print out on the console. So let's say shoe price, print out the first one, or let me just copy the variables. Yeah, shirt price. Let's clear the console. Now we are printing out. You could see that sometimes my IntelliSense comes with some things and I say, oh, I don't need it. But if you don't understand the fundamentals, you're confused. Okay, what is this? What is that? And you don't just accept everything that comes your way. Okay, and now it automatically is taking me to create local constants, which I will leave you to do that yourself. Play around. Control S, Control save, and syntax check, Control F2. Now no errors found. Let's click here. If you see right here, you also see some tabs, console, and activate. So when you activate, run, you have to click on this inside this class. When you click on run as, and then you don't see the ABAP application console, you have to make sure your cursor is inside the class, executable class. It's ABAP application. I noticed this several times, so I'm just putting it out there. Okay, so now we have 0, 0, 0. And why is that? This is because what we printed out are all initial values. Okay, these are all initial values. So there are two ways to make assignments. So it's either you give a default value right here, which you can use the keyword value, and for shoe price, let's say 120.0. For packed data type, pass the value in form of a string, literal. Okay, so let me copy this. It is right here. All right, so you can just change font. Of course, no more than 3, length is F3. All right, so if we now save S and test check, no errors, activate. Now let's SAP application console. So now you see that we now get values in the console right here as we expected, right? All right, so the other part is similarly, we have also global types. So instead of just being localized class, the global types can be used everywhere in the system package. And global types are also defined once. They are used everywhere, and you can press F2 or F3 to inspect the global class. Did I say global class? Global type. So let me comment out all this. I'm done with local types. So to do a full comment or multiple lines, just do control greater than sign into one comments. I believe it's shift and control greater distance. All right, multiple line comment. So I spoke of the global class. All right, for example, we can say data airport type. So this is an example of a global type that is available in this system, and it has a value of MUC. So if you press F2, which we discussed in previous video, if you press F2, you can inspect this, so you can see MO port demo is global type, right? So we can just go further by looking at some things that you must also know. Literals. So we've used literals code already. So when you have a text that is in quotations, quotes, this is a literal, and when there are no quotes, these are numeric. This actually affects how you do calculations and how you do comparison. For instance, if you want to do 1 plus 1, you don't put the 1 in quotes, so that makes it a text. So if you want to do calculation, then the numbers should be in numeric form without quotes. Okay, so I'll leave you to play with that while we go to the next part, which is making calculations. So basically the ABAP respect math rules, and if we give it a type, it determines the kind of rounding behavior if you have remainders or not. Okay, so for instance, there are also what we call built-in types. There are also built-in types, built-in functions like the square root. So you just need to find, okay, what do I need to do in ABAP? I need to do a calculation, I need to do addition, I need to do subtraction, I need to do division. How do I go about it? And then you can also do calculation. So let's just do some example while you go on and build on that knowledge. So for example, you just want to do a simple calculation. You know you have to declare your variables. So let's say data, let's say 1, type of integer, let's just value 10, and say data 2, value red. Okay, so 3 so third one is actually supposed to be results, because we want to add the two numbers and store result. So let's just say result is equal to shift F1, mat the string. So we have this result equals to number 1 minus number 2, print out the result. Then result equals to 1 times 2, print out results, do a division, print out results. So difference between this div mode, modulus operator, this is ratio, this is division, this is modular, and let me save this. Oh, I can't wait to show you guys how to do expression. Expression will make it so much easier to concatenate strings. All right, so do a syntax check, no errors found console, then activate. So F3 basics activated, then run program. So this is what I mentioned earlier. If you see this kind of stuff, ABAP test cockpit, we don't have console here, so you need to click inside this class, then run again. So you have ABAP application, and there we have it. So our first result, which was here. So now this is actually a good time to even learn debugging, right? So I said we're going to show you debugging here. This is a good time to learn debugging. So result here, we have the first one is 110, which is number 1, number 2, then print it in result. So we get 110. This is subtraction, we get minus 90, 1000, and so on and so forth. So let me just show you how to debug in Eclipse. So what you do is you double click on an executable line, not a data declaration line. So right here, let's say 86, just double click, or you can just put your cursor here and say right click and say toggle breakpoint. So if there was no breakpoint here, it will add it. If there is a breakpoint, then it will remove it. So now you can go on and then hit on F8, or we can just execute from here, ABAP application console, and do OK. Okay, so suppose to clear, and then it's going to stop at the line that you indicated the breakpoint on. Okay, so let's one more time. Then if you go right here, you'll see the debug perspective. Just click right here, and you have variables, you have breakpoints, and expressions. So if you go to variables, the results that you want to see, just anyways. Okay, so for some reason debugger is triggered, so usually you have to put the breakpoint at an executable line, not on data declaration. So what we can do, I'm going to restart Eclipse. Let's see this result issue. Yeah, after restarting, connect again to the workspace. Just F5, click on the particular workspace of your choice, get connected, browser. So this was the class that we were working on. Then the breakpoint is still here. You can double click on this line to add the breakpoint. Let's again as application console. Okay, now we see that our debugger is triggered. So if you had that kind of situation where your debugger is not stopping or it's not being triggered, then just restart. I think this is the second time experiencing this, so it's fine. So in debugging mode, when you just hover on a variable, you see you get additional information. So at this point, the debugger is here. So at this point, result is 0, but inside the number we have number 1 is 10, and then right here you see number 2 is 100. Okay, so then if you look at the right side, you have variables, you have breakpoints, you have expressions. So this right here shows you the local variables, or the variables that are declared in this class. You have var, you have results, you have number 1, you have 2, and at the top right here is, let's say, top right click here, show as top level variable. So this right here is top level variable. So if you want any variable to be in the top level variable, you can either right click on it and say show as top level variable, or you can just double click the variable inside the code. So if I want my number 1 to be as top level variable, all I need to do is just double click right here and see it appears here. So right now number 1, the value is 10, the actual type is int, technical description int, then have this system as sub rc variable, which is currently 0. And then if you see number 2, if you hover over it, number 2 is 100, double click, you can see it in the top level variable, right? So now if you want to go a line further, so you click either right up here or F5. So when you click on F5, it goes to the next line, and then this line is executed, and our result is now what? 110. So if you want to see result as a top level variable, right here you can see double click it, show as top level, so have 110. Likewise, you can go step by step, line by line execution. Oh, okay, we need to step out. Now we stepped into the right method. So if you are doing step F5, then you are going line by line. If you get into a method, then it goes inside that method. So to step out, if you are inside a method, you either press F7, that's you need to go back, F7, or this symbol right here, step return F7. So we are back, right? So we are on line 89. So we want to go to line 90. So you click on F5 once more. Then results, number 1 at this point is 10, number 2 is 100. So but remember, we are doing subtraction now. So the results we see here is 90 minus. So in expression, you can also format it in such a way that you can determine where the minus should be, either in front or behind. All right. So this is how you do step-by-step execution, and then you check the values if what you did here is what you are expecting. So you proceed, do for multiplication, ratio, division, mod. So let's see. Now if I want to just go to line 98, let's see these different types. Let me say, okay, 95 first. So let's click on the line, and then there's a debug button which is run to line, shift F8. So I want it to run to line 95. Then so see, now it just keeps all these lines and then jump up to line 95. And in line 95, we see have result. Here number is 10, number 2 is 10. So the reason why you're having 1000 here is because of line 92, because you are doing a multiplication here. 10 times 100 give us 1000, but we want to know what is the result. So let's go a line further, F5. So now for 10 ratio 100, what's the result? Result is 0. So let's reverse the, so let's say 2, number 2 number 1, So let's see if I can go back to line 95 again. So jump to line 95, it goes back. So here we see how the result 2. The result is 0 at the moment. Number 2 is 100. Number 1 is 10. So let's go one line down, which is F5. So right now, result is still 0. Yeah, so to get more clarity on output, explanation, I just decided to play a role. And so for result number 2, you can say divide by number 1. Okay, so that will be 100 divided by 10 plus 10. Now the data type that we use here is integer. So when the variable result is an integer, it starts 0 decimal part. Okay, this is what I want to explain. So in ABAP, when you divide two integer variables and then assign the result to an integer variable, the ABAP performs integer division. So it will just do the division and return the whole part of the result, no decimal. So they will not be rounded up, it will be truncated. Anything after the decimal point is removed. So that explains why we get zeros in the divisions that we did in the output. Alright, so now for us to also get more insight on the div and the mod operator, you can see what Joel gives an explanation to this. Of course, you can also use the ABAP syntax help, which is, I did it in the previous video. You click on F3, it takes you to, or F1 rather, it takes you to the ABAP syntax definition for the keyword. So, but Julius Faxter is here. So let's see. The code snippet you provided demonstrated the use of the div and mod operators in ABAP. So for a div operator, it performs integer division. So it divides one number by another and returns the integer part of the result, discarding the remainder. So it's basically the same thing as this right here. Just that this is in text and this is in symbol. So why the module or modulus operator mod? It will return the remainder of an integer division, so it is often used to determine number is even or odd. Okay, all right. So these are things you can also play around with. I can show you everything as a beginner. You also need to get into the game and get your hands dirty, right? Enough of the mathematical aspects. Now we are going to the string templates, which of course string processing, and this is the power of modern ABAP. So string templates are actually the game changer when you come to string concatenation. You know, you don't have to deal with concatenation stress or messy concatenations. So, and then when you write with expressions, so your expressions are inside the curly brackets. So when you write with expressions, everything is automatically converted. So this is modern ABAP style, and I'm going to show you in the code now how we do string processing concatenation. So what we have been doing so far is just pure text. So I'll go ahead to comment out these other codes. So I'll be faster now. So it's just easy. What we need to do, let's just do text string using data. Then we just say data text as a type of string, and the text, what we are going to print out is we use these bars. So these pipelines or vertical lines, and inside this pipe is where we concatenate text. So you can say text, and then we can pass in variables using curly brackets. We can say number 1 plus number 2. Then you can even say another text zeros. You notice here that there is no period here. You notice here that there is no quotes surrounding our strings or literals. Okay, and then we concatenated with variables. So let me uncomment number 1 and number 2 where we declared, just comment right here. Okay, so you can save, then shift F2, syntax check rather, shift F2, then F3 to activate, shift F3, control F3 to activate, F2 for syntax check, then execute. Okay, of course, one more thing, we need to print out the text. So we can just say out, use the right method, just put text right here. So F1, math, just check, activate, execute. All right, see now you see that we have text is equal to 110 euros. So this is the power of expression by expression. Okay, so you have the text variables and this text literals, string literals. Interesting, right? Another thing we can do is that we can also format inside template. For instance, you can do date formatting. So now you have seen how to format text or string, which is the modern ABAP style, game changer. So of course, there are also ways you can format your dates and other numbers. You can check them online. Also, another method of joining string is to use and operator, double and sign, and then this pipe sign will create a space between your two texts or your two strings. So if part 1, for instance, part 1 is hello, and then part 2 is a text or contains user, so it's going to join hello and hello user. So this pipe is going to create a space between hello and user. So if you don't add this pipe, then hello and user will be joined together. So this is another way to join two strings. So because time is fast spent, I'm just going to run through the rest of the slides, and with time or in subsequent videos or in subsequent projects, we'll be able to program the rest or have a live demonstration. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the control structures, which is all about decision making. So we have basically, you have the if and else conditionals, the case and end case conditional. So if you're coming from another programming language, you already know that this is where the program makes a decision. So we have the ifs, the else ifs, we have else statement, and then for every if, there must be an end if. Now, the difference between okay, let's look at the if statement first, an example. So here you see that if score is greater than or equals to 50, we're going to write this statement passed. And so when we have multiple conditions that we want to check, then we add the else if statement. And of course, we check from up to bottom. So the first one that runs wins the race. So if the first code runs, then the rest of the code is not executed. The else is like a fallback plan. Okay. So I'm sure you already know the if and else statement, and we'll be using tons of it in subsequent codes. So don't worry too much if you are not familiar with this. And now the other control structure is the case and end case. So this is more cleaner than the if and else, because when you have too many ifs and else if, best thing to use is the case and end case. So I'll show you an example shortly. So instead of the if statement, you can use a case and end case. So inside the case keyword and the end case, you put your code. So the keyword when, so when A, execute this line, or you can add other when, you can add other whens if that is allowed. You can say when B, write this code, when C, write this code, when D, right, and this is the last one, when others, so that you don't get an error. When others, write this, try again, and then use end case. Like I said, the end case, end case is when you have many if and else if, then this is a more better way to execute that logic. Alright, so in the next part is part 7, which is also about error handling. So of course in program generally error exists, right? Error happens. ABAP will not hide them. It always throws an exception. So for errors, you have to find a way of handling the error, find a way of trying to catch the error. That's why you have the try catch syntax. That's why this exists, right? So first and foremost, an example of an error is a division by 0. So for instance, when you want to divide a number and then you end up dividing by 0, this is a mathematical error. So you get a division by error by 0 rather, and this needs to be handled. Table access errors also exist, so we'll also be checking on looking at this in subsequent videos. And of course, the part 8 already have there are two types of loops. You have the do types and the do exit type of loop, and the part 9 is about internal tables. All right, so also when we are going to be working with tables, we're going to be working with a database. We're also going to be talking about what is an internal table. Actually, an internal table is a temporary table in a program memory. So we are also going to explain this in upcoming videos, right? And with hands-on coding examples. And like we have showed some excerpt of debugging, and debugging is what makes you a developer. So as time goes on, we debug as we go. So debugging is watching your program think. So one step at a time. This is what we have done, and also in subsequent videos we will also be doing them. All right, so these are the debugging controls that we have actually looked at in this video. You can take a screenshot of these. So the F5 that we saw, it's the line by line execution. Step into, so you run each line and see the result in the debugger perspective. And then F6 is when you want to step over a method. For instance, you want to execute a method, but you don't want to go inside that method. You use F6. And F7 is to step out of a method. So if you're inside a method and you are done observing the changes and the variables inside that method, then you can do F7 to step out. All right. Or if you mistakenly entered the method, then you can step out by using F7 without ending the debugger session. And then Shift F8 is to run to a particular number line, and this is without execution. Sorry, this is with execution rather. All right, so it's Shift F12 that you jump to that line. There's no execution. All right, so you just move from one line to another, and of course you can terminate the debugger when you're done. So basically this is what we have covered so far, and because of the time that I've used, we're not able to go into much explanation of this other concept, but these are what we are going to be using in subsequent videos. So if you are interested in learning more, doing more with modern ABAP, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video. See you in the next video.